Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:36 is the time. Well, what do you make of that interview with Robert Jenrick? Look, there are 20,000 questions you could ask. A lot of them, as I say, asked at the press conference last Thursday, every interview over the weekend. I wanted to get to quite a bit of like where we are going forward, because I know a hell of a lot of you really care about this future of this country. And my God, we can't do any worse, can we, than the Prime Minister we've got at the moment. But joining me to have a bit of a chat right now, I'm delighted to say it's Benjamin Butterworth, who's a journalist and broadcaster, joins us regularly. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Two things I've tasked you with having a look at this morning. First of all, Keir Starmer's press conference. Sorry. Back in the room. Which he said, genuinely, I'm sitting there with my shorthand, writing away, did my journalism course, shorthand, no. What has he actually said? And then an interview with Robert Jenrick. First of all, your reaction to what Robert Jenrick had to say and into that defection.
Well, the bit I most enjoyed was when you said, what job do you want? And there was a notable pause, there was a notable silence, and then he kind of, the only point where he sort of slightly flailed when he was asked if his ambition had gone out of the window. And I just think that is the most telling part. I think this is only the start of a story that I suspect is going to become quite a soap opera, because what do we know about Robert Jenrick? He's extremely ambitious. He said that on the record. He tried to be Tory leader, he failed, he was dishonest and disloyal to the people that got him the job of an MP in the first place in the Tories.
Yep.
And what do we know about Farage? It is a one-man band if he wants it to be. He doesn't like rival leaders. He doesn't like people that dominate the airwaves against him. And so I just wonder whether this is certainly a coup right now. I would come back in 12 months and see whether it's quite so calm.
Yes, it's very. I do wonder, particularly also whether Zia Yusuf, who was party chairman, had resigned over previous issues. That Zia Yusuf basically put his foot down and basically said, "Right, we've got to have a deadline. We can't just have another Tory turning up here constantly. We need to have a deadline." And that Nigel Farage agreed to the 7th of May deadline. That's the last date you can come. My thing is, though, if you've got some other really senior figure, whether it's Tory or anybody else, wanting to join the party, who was credible, and I would say someone like, if you're David Davises or you're Ian Duncan Smiths, your Lord Frosts, people like that, who've got absolute credibility on key issues like Brexit, if they wanted to come over after 7th of May, do you seriously think that Nigel Farage would go, no, thank you?
No, I don't. But I think what they're trying to do with this May deadline is to try and establish themselves as the dominant right-wing party, to try and make that indisputable, and also presumably to make it the place where all the money goes by saying we're the primary force, not the Tories. And so I think that's why they're trying to get the funnel of people over right now to establish that. Yeah. Also, of course, 2 more defections, and they'll be bigger than the SNP in Westminster.
Yeah, I mean, this is the extraordinary thing, is it, how things change, isn't it? Love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. We'll get you, of course, I promise, very soon. Let's also talk about what Keir Starmer had to say. He's supposed to be off on a trip today, campaigning elections, or whatever he was doing. I mean, who cares? I mean, genuinely, it's painful. It's absolutely painful. But he decided to make a statement at number 10 it was actually, I think, number 9, wasn't he? At that wood-panelled room. And he made a statement, and I was watching it, and eventually, of course, talk sort of moved away from it, and when there were questions and things. But he doesn't answer questions, and B, as far as I can tell, he really didn't say anything. It was certainly not a Hugh Grant moment in Love Actually, standing up to the American president, talk about mature relationships and how these relationships matter. They deliver concrete benefits. Our values built slowly over time. We are resolute in protecting those values. Principles cannot be set aside. Greenland belongs to the people of Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark alone. That right is fundamental. Talking about how geopolitics affects people at home, because people think, oh, it's something happening over there. Tariffs from the US on UK goods being exported will impact jobs here, full stop. It will. He talked about active government, steady at home, engaged abroad, protect the people we serve, and then had to go at people who do sound bites, saying we prefer solutions to sound bites. I thought that was a bit of a soundbite, personally.
I feel the hand of history on my shoulder.
Yes, the finger of fudge, as Tony Blair had. That's a Good Friday Agreement. I mean, he talked for about, it felt like 8 hours. It's probably only a matter of minutes. I couldn't work out what he had actually said that he hadn't already said, which is, of course, Greenland's future is up to the people of Greenland. He hasn't threatened anything. When he was asked questions, he wasn't saying it, but he was talking about dialogue rather than tariffs. Should he have gone stronger, or is he doing the right thing, just trying to maybe try and talk Donald Trump down? Because apparently they're all going to be in Davos this week at the big sort of billionaire fest in Davos, at the World Economic Forum. Do you think that he was right to sort of say nothing?
I mean, the problem he has, which to be fair, anybody in his job would have right now, is that Donald Trump doesn't really listen to anyone else. He doesn't appear to do diplomacy, certainly not in the way people normally do. This clearly isn't in Europe's interests or Britain's interests to behave this way towards Greenland, at least not in this nature. And yet we need to be close to the US. And so I do, I have some sympathy with the position. I think what he has to do is reflect the anger that people will feel. You talk about the jobs. The £10 billion in manufacturing of cars would be really badly affected by this. So there's a very real vulnerability.
There already are more
tariff.
tariffs than there were before Trump came in, but they are lower than the EU has. Yeah.
But the other part that I thought was interesting was that he was asked, do you believe the US president's threat to take military action in Greenland? And he said no. Now, I don't know if that was in the script before he took to the press conference, but saying you don't believe the US president's threat, I think does run a risk that if Mr. Trump notices what's been said,
that'll well, the thing is, I mean, Mark Rutte is the NATO General Secretary. He seems to be the Trump whisperer when it comes to these issues, and they usually try and sort of.
Didn't he call him Daddy?
Yes. But I don't think he called him. To be fair, it made sense at the time. I did get that. But then one of the questions was interesting. Did Donald Trump actually misinterpret the EU and the UK sending some military? I mean, I think we sent one bloke and his ski shoes, for goodness sake. But the only person we had left in the army. But sent them over to protect Greenland. The idea of that, which was that Donald Trump was saying Greenland's not defended from Russia or China, and they need to be defended, and so Europe did so. That Donald Trump has interpreted that as you're trying to defend Greenland from me. And of course, the reality is we can't defend Greenland from the US. Isn't this a bit of a wake-up call that actually the EU, the UK and Europe generally doesn't really have the wherewithal to protect our territories?
Well, on the troops, Germany sent some soldiers there and they've already flown back to Germany in the last 24 hours, so that didn't last long. I think actually there is a really...
Sort of thing the French would do.
Give up, yeah.
Little white flag.
There is a really valid point at the centre of this. I think Donald Trump going against NATO allies is a pretty dangerous way to do it. But I was listening to the US journalist Hadley Gamble, who interviewed Vladimir Putin in 2021. She spent 4.5 hours with him. And she was saying that she asked him about some missiles that they have, and she said, can I go and visit them, Mr. Putin? And he said, well, no, because they're in submarines in the Arctic. Yeah. And so that demonstrates that this is a serious problem that, frankly, we certainly haven't been talking about. And the conviction...
We would have known that, though.
But the accusation that we weren't doing enough may well hold quite a lot of weight. And so I just wonder, and you sort of have to be optimistic about this, is Donald Trump doing the game that he's played quite a lot in the last 18 months, which is to put these big threats, to put the tariffs on, to make a massive media storm, to put every politician in Europe in an awkward position, and then before the 1st of February, when these tariffs would come in, we'll have said, OK, well, we'll give you all these troops and we'll give you all these money, and Denmark will say to the US, OK, well, you can, have this much better arrangement than you already have, and that will be where it ends. It just seems extremely unlikely, and Republicans are saying this, let alone lefties like me, that Donald Trump will be serious about military action against a NATO ally.
There's a lot of talk that actually his own senior military would all, resign en masse if this were the case, attacking a fellow NATO territory. It was absolutely fascinating. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Again, a lot of people will be saying, and I think vaguely something Keir Starmer did make a point of, that, these things are just, they're over there. People might go, Israel's not my problem, Iran's not my problem, Greenland's not my problem, Ukraine's not my problem. Yeah, well, when your heating bills went up, you remember when the economy was trashed? Yeah, that was Ukraine. Yeah, these things have a funny way of becoming our problem. Iran, those terror attacks, they're all funded by the Iranians. Greenland is a NATO ally. If we expect to be protected by our NATO allies, we need to protect our NATO allies. We're maybe caught in this battle between the US and Europe. Do I give two hoots whether the Danes or the Americans have Greenland? No. We talk about the rule of law. Is there a rule of law? It's basically the rule of might, is it not? Has it not always been that way? Give us your thoughts. Love to hear you have your say. 0344 499 1000. And of course, your thoughts on Robert Jenrick as well. Right now, we're going to take a quick break. And you